Prompting. I'm Melissa Dubie, an educational consultant at Indiana Resource Center for Autism. Today, I'm going to talk about prompting, different levels of prompting, and when to apply the prompting. Prompting is any assistance that's provided to the student after an instruction is given, but before the student responds. Research has shown prompting to be used to help a student successfully use a skill. It also reduces incorrect responses so the student can see themselves to be successful, and it increases the student's engagement in the task. The idea of prompting is that we want the student to be successful, even if we have to give them a prompt, 1 prompt, 2 prompts, 3 prompts, that we're still successful even if we need 3 prompts. So when can prompting be used? Well, it can really be used with anyone in any circumstances. It could be structured classrooms, unstructured classrooms, one-on-one with a student, or within a small group or a large group. It can be used with students age 3 through 22. So it doesn't matter if you're working as a paraprofessional with preschool, elementary, middle school, high school, even adults before they leave school at age 22. It can be used also to teach any kind of skills. It could be any kind of skills that's related to autism spectrum disorders. In other words, difficulty with play skills or academics, getting kids started to start a task. It could be communicating and having that back and forth conversation. It could be motor skills, handwriting skills, using a sensory break, vocational skills. Could be during lunchtime or during specials. So it could be during elective classes, on the job skills. So when the answer is all of the time. So there are 5 different types of prompts that I'm going to go through today and give you examples. The first one is called a gestural prompt. A gesture is usually a point. I've had some people that have put their whole hand out and pointed with all of their fingers, but most of the time it's a prompt using a point. And so you're pointing, for this example of the boy on the top, he's pointing to which key the girl should click on, and he's pointing and showing the monitor and what it looks like up on the monitor. So he's showing her how to use a keyboard so that she could see the key points. The boy in the lower right-hand corner, he's pointing to where the girl needs to write the answers. So these are 2 different ways to use prompting, but the prompting is where we can make, and I will show you in a few minutes how you could blend the prompt of gestures with other prompt levels. Verbal is another prompt level. This is not the whole group instruction. This is an individual prompt that's given after the whole group instructions given by the teacher. A verbal prompt could be like, go check your schedule, or answer the next question, open your book. We're on page 12. Those are all verbal prompts, short, clear, and concise. You can also use the verbal prompt with a cue, like the frog is green, and you're trying to get them to say green. Or you can use a verbal prompt of a food that is salty is chips. What food is salty? So you're giving them the answer, and then you're asking them a question to reflect back on what you just gave them. That's a verbal prompt as well. Another prompt is a visual prompt. Visual prompts can be pictures, visual cues. It can be words. Also, a picture that tells a student to check her schedule for be an example. So the student also, it can be highlighting exactly what needs to be done. So in this picture, the student's name is highlighted on their cubby, and read is green. And so Reed has green for many different things in the class. He has a green cup to drink out of for snack. He has a green square at his desk to show that that's the place he sits. So green is Reed's color. And also the teacher uses those crayons. So a green crayon shows him where he should sit, or a green crayon shows him that it indicates that that's his own. So it highlights information for Reed. This other student, he has a piece of a carpet square with an animal on it. And when he's given that animal, that's where he knows where he has to sit on the carpet square. So that's a visual prompt. A visual prompt also can be positioned. And in the top right-hand corner, this round circle, which is part of a puzzle, but we used it to show a student where he should work. And so we would give the red circle, which would be an object, and he would then match it on that puzzle. And then he knew that he had to start working in that area where the puzzle piece was given to him. Another visual prompt is sometimes called arrowless teaching. If I told the student I wanted them to hand me the number 3, but the numbers 1 and 3 were side by side, they were reaching for the 1, which would be the incorrect answer, I can move the 3 closer to the student so they would definitely give me the correct answer, because I want them to do it arrowlessly. I want them to be able to give with a visual prompt to be successful and do it correctly. Another prompt is called modeling prompt. This speech language person wants the little girl to make the O sound. And so she's showing that we touch our cheeks and they kind of are indented in our face. And then she's making the O sound so that she can see it with her lips. She can see the speech language pathologist do it as well. So she's modeling it for them, for the little girl. A physical prompt, there's 2 different kinds of physical prompt. There's a partial physical prompt and a full physical prompt. Many of you probably already know what a full physical, which is hand over hand, where you put your hand on an individual's hand. It also helps if you're doing a full physical with your hand being on the outside of the person's body. So if you're holding their right hand, that you come across the back of them and you put your hand on the outside of their hand and then on top of their hand. Instead of putting your hand across their chest and then putting hand over hand. So think about it, because we're going to talk about how maybe you want to eventually fade that prompt, and it's hard when you want to be least invasive into their space. A partial physical is when you're guiding their hand or their elbow or just the back of their wrist. So this person is guiding the lady's elbow and wrist to use the walker. But I've used it for picture exchange communication, where one person sits behind the student and another staff member sits in front of and let's just say they're trying to hand them a picture of popcorn to have a snack for popcorn, and they're not grabbing whatever the picture is to say, hey, I want popcorn. So we're touching their elbow or guiding them, either partial physical or full physical, to hand the picture of popcorn to the staff member in front of them, so that indicates that they want popcorn for snack. So those are different types of physical prompts. The least prompts are gestural, and then verbal, then visual, modeling, and physical. From least to most. Least being that the student is most independent, and full physical is most dependent on staff. It's important when you give a prompt, you wait. Some students need 10 seconds, some students need 30 seconds or a minute. It just depends on how long a student needs to process before you give another prompt. You don't want to give a prompt too fast, because you may not even need the next prompt that you have all decided to give. So it's just important that you wait between giving a prompt. Now you can I would suggest, and research suggests, that you use 3 prompts. You think of 3 prompts. It does not have to be in this order. It doesn't have to be from gestural, verbal, and visual. It's really based on what the student's style of learning is. And so some students' style of learning is they don't really process the verbal out loud. And so we might want to skip the verbal. You just want to give a gestural, then you might want to give a visual, and then if that doesn't work, then you could get a full physical. So it's really what works for the student, but you want to think about it with the staff of which 3 are really most effective for the student, so that at the end of those 3 prompts, and possibly at the first or second prompt, that the student will be able to do the task on their own. So when to use these prompting, like I said earlier, it's really about any time you're teaching any skills. It could be a new skill usually, but it's because if they already have the skill, they don't need the prompt levels. But if it's a new skill they're learning, communication, social, academic, sensory, play skills, transitioning in the hallway, vocational skills, all of those things. But it's any time when a student can be a part of the tasks, and, so that they can be successful. So the benefits of prompting is you want to increase the likelihood the student will give you a correct response. So we're trying to make it so that they aren't making mistakes. We want them to be successful. We want to cheer them on and say, hey, you did this on your own. But on your own could include a prompt. That's still okay. That's still that they're successful with that prompt. It also we want to reduce errors. And so if we're always setting it up so that the student is successful, then they'll see themselves as being successful, which will then reduce the frustrations that they have. And then we can still give a reinforcement even if we give a prompt. So prompting, I want you to think about it in some steps because, like full physical, sometimes we do full physical and we don't even have the student's attention. The student is kind of looking around the room and you're moving their hand and they're not really engaged. And so it's important that you gain the student's attention with a prompt before you get started. And then you wait briefly for the student to respond. Could be eye contact, could be just your students well. How do you know that they're paying attention? So once you think that they're paying attention, then you can give the first prompt that you as a paraprofessional and the teacher have decided. And as soon as they do the task, you give praise, you give reinforcer, you give a point, however the point system is, so whatever reinforcer is working for that individual. So here's an example of using prompting with Henry. We wanted Henry to sit on the carpet piece. So Henry is moving to the group area. The teacher gets Henry by saying, hey, Henry, he says his name, and then she tells him to sit on the carpet square. The teacher then waits briefly for a response. So she's given an auditory prompt. And then if Henry does not go to the carpet after she said 30 seconds, then she would point to the carpet square, which was a gestural prompt. And then Henry sits on the carpet square and ready to go. So then you say, hey, Henry, great job sitting on the carpet square. We're ready to start. Another one is Eleanor. And let's say the goal is with a visual prompt, Eleanor will follow a one-step direction. So the prompts that we're going to give Eleanor is say, Eleanor, time to walk in the hallway. So that's a verbal prompt. Then show her a visual of her actually walking. So that's a visual prompt. And then you're going to sometimes, if you need it, if you've waited, in this case, Eleanor needed 30 seconds watching our clock or watching a clock on the wall, 30 seconds, and then be able to, if you need to, give her a modeling prompt. And then usually after the modeling prompt, she would definitely do it. And then you could say to Eleanor, nice walking in the hallway, because she's still done it. She's still done the skill, completed the skill with the prompts. So another idea is to think about prompting from behind or kind of sideways or a little bit off to the side of the student. And so with some prompting, I always think about this with schedules. If I want to give a schedule piece, which is a visual of check your schedule, and then I pair it with, let's say I'm not going to say the words at all. I'm just going to give the student the picture of check your schedule. And then I'm going to I might point to it to get them started. That's a a gestural prompt. And then from behind, I could guide them with through the back of their shoulder to guide them to move forward. So that would be a partial physical prompt. But I need to be a little bit behind them so that I can fade some of those prompts. I can fade the touching of the shoulder. I could just give them the picture and then point to it, and then they'll go. Or I could just eventually give the picture. But if I'm standing in the front and I'm in the way, then I'm in the way. So I need to stand away from them. So eventually I can fade those prompts so that the student will be successful. So that's called prompt fading. So there's some rules about prompts, just to remember. The response or wait time you give for a student will vary depending on each student. I've had some students that I gave one middle school student a prompt to line up for lunch, and she couldn't wait to get to lunch, but because her mom was a lunch lady, but it took her a minute and a half to line up. So that meant to me, if something she's excited to do is a minute and a half, in order to give a direction, we have to wait even a minute and a half at least. So we decided to give a minute and 45 seconds every time we gave a direction, which seems like forever. So, but we would give the direction, then we would answer 2 or 3 different people's other students' questions, and then we would come back and give another prompt, like we would give a visual of lining up. And then again, we would wait a minute, 45 seconds. If that didn't work, then we would model getting up for her so that she would know, oh, it's time for me to get up. And again, wait a minute, 45 seconds. So because if I said the same prompt over and over again, time to line up, time to line up, time to line up, then she's going to have to process that minute and 45 seconds every time I say something else to her. And so it's going to take longer and longer, and it's going to be more frustrating to her because she's not processing the information, and you're thinking she's not listening. So it's really important that those two things are noted. Also, the order or the type of prompts will not be the same for every student, as I've already said. And when the prompts will be faded are different for each individual as well. So some people may do the same 3 prompts for the whole entire school year. That's still successful. If they're still doing the skill, then it's successful. And you don't need to fade the prompts. And often I hear, well, it's a visual, so let's just take the visual away in the fall and start over. That's not a good idea either. If the visuals worked in the fall, in the spring, then we should continue with whatever prompt levels in the fall for the student to be successful. So I just want you to think about a skill that you're trying to learn. One of the skills I'm trying to learn is how to knit. And knitting, I've watched some videos on how to knit. I sit with my mom and she shows me how to knit. She shows me, usually sometimes she'll sit behind me and I'll put my hands on top of her hands and she'll show me how to make the stitches and the tension. I can kind of feel the different types of tension so that each of my stitches are not too big or too little, not the tension is right. So sometimes I'll sit behind her and do it. Sometimes she'll sit behind me and do it. And then with the video, so those are both physical prompts. And then I like to see the video. So I'm always watching another video. And then I'm also practicing. So those are the ways that I learn to knit. So I want you to think about a skill that is difficult or that you're trying to learn and what type of prompts work best for you. And the way I describe me learning to knit may be different, probably will be different of how you might learn how to knit if you don't know how. So this is the ways to do prompting. I hope this video was helpful. Thank you as paraprofessionals for everything that you do. This was written in collaboration with Daviess-Martin Special Ed Cooperative and Indiana Resource Center for Autism.